Hello there. Welcome to this episode of Just the Dis. My name is Brian, and we talk about Blu-rays here. And for this episode, I am doing a collection update. Now, this will show up on the channel a while after I've done these, but several of these films I've done as individual reviews on the channel. And I totally get it. You guys don't like those quite as much. And so, as a result, those don't get viewed as much, and that's totally fine. But I want to bring them back in because I really do feel like for those of you that only watch the collection updates, again, I completely understand. You're missing out on some good releases, and I won't go as in-depth as I did in those reviews. So if you see something here that you like, I will mention if I've done a review previous, and you can go back and look at it. But no worries if you don't want to. So I'll start with something I haven't talked about yet, or I haven't talked about in this version, and that is Let It Ride. This is the new Paramount or recent Paramount Blu-ray version of it. Now, I did talk about the imprint version of it, and I'm going to go ahead and say right now, the imprint is definitely the way to go. I think it's still in print at this time, but I'll tell you why in a minute. So Let It Ride. I've talked about it before. One of my favorite gambling movies ever. Among my favorite Richard Dreyfuss performances. He's just fantastic in this movie. He plays a cabbie with a gambling problem. His buddy is played by David Johansen, former member of the New York Dolls, also a.k.a. Buster Poindexter. And they are a delightful duo of buddies that are both cab drivers, both with gambling problems. And they kind of find their way into a really interesting situation. Now, I'll first say that the movie opens in a really neat way with Dreyfuss and his wife in the film, played by Terry Garr, talking about like how he's going to turn over a new leaf, and it devolves into this great joke about fortune cookies, which immediately, like the idea that she hands him the fortune cookie and he is like, oh, I can't open that now that you've tainted the fortune. And they go around the restaurant and everybody else has got a different theory about, how to deal with fortune cookies and stuff. But it gives you a sense of his superstitions as a gambler. And I love that as an opening. So the plot really kicks in when David Johansen has a really creepy, weird habit of recording people. He has just a tape recorder in his car, his cab, and he just will record conversations to listen to, I guess. And he happens to catch one between two gentlemen who are talking pretty openly about a race upcoming at the local track, wherein the fix is in, if you will, and that the odds on this horse, basically, in no uncertain terms, this one particular horse is going to win unless he gets struck by lightning. And I love Dreyfuss later says, well, you like the odds on lightning, which I always think is a good line. But so David Johansen plays the tape for Dreyfuss just as a lark, not that particular part. And Dreyfuss is like, whoa, back that up. What was that? And they decide they don't know who these guys are, but this sounds legit. Let's go and bet on this race. And I will tell you that they win the first bet. And then it gets interesting because Dreyfuss decides he's having a lucky day. You've seen this a lot in gambling movies. And they're really emotionally engaging on that level, in that you're just like, oh my gosh, just keep the money. Just don't. But obviously that's part of the gambling addiction, is that when you hit something, you have to look to the luck gods or whatever and say, this might be my moment. This might be my day. And so the question is Jay Trotter, Dreyfuss's character, having that day? And how far will it go and what'll happen? And it's just a great, funny gambling movie. I absolutely love it. And like I said, the performance by Dreyfuss is, he's got this charisma and this energy that he has in the best of his performances, and I absolutely love him. So, love the movie. This only has a behind-the-scenes featurette, and that's it. I haven't had a chance to look at the transfer, but I think I'm going to guess it's the same as this. So this is the indicator version, which I rejoiced when I got my hands on. It has a nice slip box, same cover. This has a little bit more stuff, though. This has, see, it says 1080p high-definition presentation from Paramount, so I'm assuming it's probably the same scan. But it has a film historian from commentary from Scott Harrison, which I enjoyed, and the Finish Line directing Let It Ride, an interview with director Joe Pytka, which is, I guess that could be the making of. I really should have watched that. I'm so sorry, you guys. Behind the scenes featurette, I don't know. I feel like they would have. That sounds like archival marketing stuff to me and not a brand new feature, but maybe I'm wrong. But the Joe Pytka interview is very, very interesting because he talks about the difficulties he had with the film, and there's some really cool, one definitely thing they don't have on this is the deleted scenes, which are really neat because there's some things that are set up in the movie that I miss a little bit, but it's just nice to know they exist, and Pytka makes reference to those scenes in the interview. So this is the one, unfortunately. I must not have really looked deep on the features, but I think I was like, Let It Ride, I love that movie. Maybe the scan is different or something. And it was only like $12. So if you're in the state, again, this is region free, so it's going to be more expensive. If you just want a really good gambling movie for $12 or $13, this Paramount version is going to be great for you. No offense to the imprint, but that imprint is the way to go. Okay. Now on to a series of films I have covered with deeper reviews. I'll start with Red Rocket, Sean Baker's film Red Rocket. I showed this off in my review, but I'm honored to have this autographed copy of Red Rocket on Blu-ray, and it says, "To Brian, the ultimate cinephile, Sean Baker." I don't even know what to say to that. That's a remarkably kind thing for him to say. I will say that Sean and I have been acquaintanced for years now. He's been a guest on Pure Cinema, and I do recommend you check out that episode. But he's also a fan of Just the Disc, the podcast. And I've heard from him over the years that he listens to the podcast. And I think he watches the channel a little bit, but he's maybe more of a podcast guy, which I totally understand. But that was an honor to get this copy from him signed like that. And Sean, not only a great filmmaker, but a great cinephile. I think I mentioned this in my review. He's just a guy who knows his movies and watches a lot of movies. And so for him to say that about me, I'm speechless, really. Anyway, Red Rocket, great movie, one of the best films of last year, and a remarkable performance from Simon Rex as Mikey Saber, a down and out, washed out porn star from Los Angeles who returns to, I believe, Texas City, Texas, down to no money, to try and reconnect with his estranged wife, who he bailed on to go to LA and never divorced, I don't think. And so he comes out there and tries to ingratiate himself. He's a pretty charismatic, though kind of despicable character. He's funny, and you kind of see why people are drawn to him. But, he's an incredibly full of himself, and it's a tough thing to root for him, especially where the movie goes. And I won't go too far into it, but it has to do with him sort of finding somebody that he thinks could sort of help reinvigorate his career in pornography while he's down in Texas City, Texas, trying to, crash on his wife's couch. And she is not happy to see him at all. She lives with her mom, and so that's a very, awkward situation. But it's really interesting how funny the film is while still being pretty dark and, impactful. But yeah, great performance by Simon Rex. Really loved it. This disc is pretty great. Has a commentary from Sean Baker, his cinematographer Drew Daniels, and Simon Rex. And one of the things that comes up is the influence of Sugarland Express, Spielberg's film Sugarland Express, and the widescreen they shot on Super 16, and it looks great. It's super wide. Blu-ray looks wonderful. Drew Daniels has a lot of cool stuff to say about the lenses and how they shot it. Baker talks about that stuff too. The really cool one for me is the audio commentary by film critic Kat Ellinger. And for those that haven't heard her name, you must not have watched any videos on this channel, because I talk about her constantly, because she's working constantly, because she's a great film historian and a great commentator. And I love that Sean got her to do this track. It's really good. She goes into the Italian influence of the film and Italian comedy specifically, and a lot of character types. And I don't want to go too deep into it. Go watch my review, and I go a little deeper into it. But know that it's a great commentary. And Sean is a big physical media fan, and that's how he knows Kat, and that's why he got Kat. And I can't, give him enough kudos for that. And then there's a making of Red Rocket as well. So definitely worthwhile. Good Blu-ray, worth your time. Next up, we have Eastern Promises on 4K. This is David Cronenberg's film. This was a first-time watch for me. I reviewed this and the next 4K, and I recommend going in, checking out those that review to get the more specific stuff. But a very good film, an interesting companion piece to History of Violence. Different writer and everything, but both have Viggo Mortensen. In this case, he is a sort of a driver for some Russian mob folks living and working in London. And Naomi Watts is a nurse who comes into contact with a woman who, at the beginning of the film, she's pregnant. She stumbles into a drugstore and just collapses. And she comes into the hospital and is hemorrhaging badly and ends up dying in childbirth, leaving the child to potentially be put into the foster system. And she has this diary that's in Russian. And so Naomi Watts takes it to her uncle, played by director Jerzy Skolimowski, who did Deep End, which I love. Great movie from the early 70s. And he reads the diary and immediately knows there's some bad people involved. There's also a business card for this restaurant, and she goes to the restaurant. Armin Mueller-Stahl runs it. We find out he's a Russian mob guy. His son is played by Vincent Cassel, and Viggo drives for Vincent Cassel, and she sort of gets pulled into that world. And that's all I'm going to say about it. I go a little more in depth in the review, so you can go watch that. But 4K looks good and has some nice features. Interviews with the screenwriter, with Cronenberg, several interviews with Cronenberg, and one with Naomi Watts. So solid release. This has the 4K and the Blu-ray. So that is Eastern Promises. And then The Apartment. This is a great 4K. I've had a lot of questions about, or people talking about, the Arrow Blu-ray, and it's a tough call. I get folks not wanting to upgrade. I got that Blu-ray, and I love that Blu-ray. You do get some of the features from this on there. Again, I go much more in detail. If you haven't seen The Apartment, I'm not going to really summarize it too much, except that it's a great Jack Lemmon performance. Great performance by Shirley MacLaine, and also Fred McMurray is kind of a heel. One of, if not Billy Wilder's best movies. But this 4K looks really great. Very nice detail. And in terms of stuff you get here, the film historian commentary by Bruce Block is actually on the Arrow Blu-ray. The one you don't get is the Joseph McBride commentary, which I did like very much, and I do highly recommend. He wrote Billy Wilder, Dancing on the Edge. And then the Inside the Apartment documentary and Magic Time, Art of Jack Lemmon featurettes are both really good, and I don't think those are included in the Arrow set either. So it's a tough call. If you haven't gotten The Apartment on Blu-ray, this 4K looks great, so I gotta recommend it. Really, really nice stuff. So that's The Apartment on 4K from Kino. Then I'm gonna squeak in another one I talked about a while back. Warner Archives Blu-ray of Fandango, one of my favorite road films of all time, and really great earlier performance from Costner, and an equally good performance from Judd Nelson. Story is about a group of guys calling themselves the Groovers. They have a house at this university in Texas in 1971. They're graduating. Judd Nelson has been part of the ROTC. He's going off to Vietnam, and two of the other guys have gotten induction letters, and it looks like they may try to dodge the draft. And they are going down to Mexico to dig up Dom, their friend Dom. And so it becomes a road movie about them finding their way down to Mexico. And it's incredibly funny. The back and forth between Costner and Judd Nelson is just fantastic. They're just so jabby with each other, just so like calling out each other's exact flaws, the way that real friends actually could do if they wanted to. And they're obviously in a slight point of crisis in terms of this coming of age for these older guys. But it's super fun. Has one of my favorite uses of Elton John. Saturday Night's All Right opens the movie, and it's a great title sequence of the car driving. I love it. I think it's the best and the coolest Elton John's ever been in a film for me. But yeah, I love this movie. It's a Tarantino favorite, and no extras on this Blu-ray, but it looks great, as you would expect from Warner Archive, because they always do a nice job. So I have to highly recommend Fandango, and was so excited that this got a Blu-ray. It's legit among my favorite films of all time, so I can't really give it more of a recommend than that. Next up, we have a couple more that I reviewed together, some classic comedies. I'll start with Howard Hawks' Man's Favorite Sport. And this is a latter period Hawks. Again, I'll go into more detail about it in the review that I have on the channel. But it's fun. It's sort of a paraphrased remake of Bringing Up Baby in some ways. In this case, it involves, instead of he's an archaeologist or something. Cary Grant's like got his dinosaur skeletons in that movie. Anyway, this one involves a sports writer played by Rock Hudson, who for Abercrombie and Fitch. And by writer I mean he's written a book on fishing, and fishing is a big part of this movie. If you want to call this a sports movie, it's a fishing movie. And the idea is that Hudson is a fraud. He's got some people that he knows that know about fishing, and he more or less has sort of gleaned enough from them to be able to write this penultimate fishing guide. And at the beginning of the movie, he sort of crashes, not literally crashes, but almost kind of finds this woman played by Paula Prentice, who is very similar to the Katharine Hepburn character. She's not quite as flighty as that character. And in fact, she's really together in that she knows a lot about fishing, and she ends up inviting and getting Rock Hudson's character involved in this fishing tournament, which he will be embarrassed. But Abercrombie and Fitch wants him to go, but he'll be embarrassed because he can't really fish. And she ends up with her friend, I forget the other girl's name in the film. They sort of guide him. They give him fishing lessons, to kind of help him with this fishing contest. But, the last 2/3 of the movie are in the wilderness, in quotes, which I like 1960s camping stuff, outdoorsy stuff. I don't know. There's something about that period when people seem to be taking those vacations, and there's the running joke of how more complicated the equipment has become. That's kind of funny. Anyway, Rock Hudson's good at it. It's a very colorful production design, a lot of pratfalls, some of the broadest comedy Hawks ever did, including bear riding a scooter, a real bear riding a scooter, but a cute, rom-com, ultimately, and worth watching, I think. Nice looking transfer, and has a commentary with filmmaker, historian Michael Schlesinger, who is joined by Paula Prentice herself and her husband of 60 years, director-actor Richard Benjamin. She doesn't have a lot to say. I mean, it's a long time ago for her to remember this, so I don't really expect her to remember a lot of details, but she's able to add a few things, and Benjamin adds some things about rock, and it's nice having them there. It's a cute thing to have them there, and it's also cute they've been married for so long. Maybe one of the longest-running married couples in Hollywood history. Adorable. And she's adorable in the movie. So that's Man's Favorite Sport. And then You Can't Cheat an Honest Man. This is, I want to say about the fifth. Yeah, I want to say about the fifth W.C. Fields film. I mean, this is part of a group of Fields films that are coming in this new wave. But you've had things like It's a Gift, Never Give a Sucker an Even Break, The Bank Dick, and there's one more. So Kino's really been doing some great work in terms of putting out W.C. Fields films. And if you have been watching the channel long enough, you've heard me mention him. It's a Gift is maybe my favorite comedy. I absolutely love it. I've seen it many, many times. It makes me laugh every time. And this film is neat because it features Fields doing some similar stuff. There's some things he does. His comedy's all about people annoying each other. I've said that before, but there's some things he does in this movie physically, like when there's like a ruckus that sets him off, he grabs his hat and throws it in the air or something, and there's that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of great Fields dialogue in here. He plays a kind of rough around the edges guy who runs a circus, and his daughter is kind of ashamed of him, and so there's a subplot with her trying to marry this rich guy, and it's, will he embarrass her, or how much will he embarrass her, And so it's fun to see the sort of Fields in a circus movie. I mean, that's totally my kind of thing. And he totally comes through with a lot of great bits. The only downside of the movie is that Charlie McCarthy and Edgar Bergen, the then very popular ventriloquist act, who were in other movies and, very prominent at the time, they are given a little too much of a spotlight. Like, they are given a third, if not more, of the screen time in the film, and they are definitely funny. But when you've got Fields over here doing some really great stuff, I'm always kind of like, let's get back to Fields. So in a movie where they might be a highlight, and they certainly are good here, ultimately, I just wanted more Fields. So I did like this. It was a fun discovery for me. I'd never seen this film before, but that was a little bit of a downside to it. It has an audio commentary also by Michael Schlesinger, also great. Like, I know he's done more tracks, but having listened to this and Man's Favorite Sport in close proximity, I'm an instant fan of his, and I recommend his stuff. So that is You Can't Cheat an Honest Man. Then I will talk about something that I just revisited. I'm going to throw these in from time to time. This is part of the collection update. This is something I watched for... I did a podcast, which I don't know when it'll be out, but it's for my buddies at the Pink Smoke. I definitely recommend the Pink Smoke podcast as part of their Patreon, and I think it's actually available outside of that too, and their website. Big cinephiles, really great critical minds, as well as just wonderful movie fans that I am friendly with. I love these guys, and so it was great to talk to them about this film and Sturges in general. And if you haven't seen The Lady Eve, again, among my favorite comedies ever made, and I always loved it, but every time I come back to it, I'm like, wow, this is a near perfect movie, and one that I just absolutely am floored by every time. Like, there's no wasted dialogue. Every joke, every throwaway line is not a throwaway line. It either sets something up or, pulls out a laugh. But anyway, Sturges is one of the great writer-directors of the 40s, one of the early writer-directors of the 40s. I mean, by that, he was a writer and then became a writer-director. So he wrote for scripts for people like Mitchell Leisen. He did a film called Remember the Night. He wrote that, which is actually the first. I mean, I don't know if it's the first, but it precedes Double Indemnity in terms of Barbara Stanwyck and Fred MacMurray being together on screen, and it's a very different feeling film. I highly recommend checking that one out. There's one called Easy Living, also very good, that he wrote the script for. But he got a late start. He got started at about 42 years old in 1940 with The Great McGinty, and he would go on to do Christmas in July, which I think I've talked about on the channel, and that has a really nice Kino Lorber Blu-ray with a great Sam Deegan commentary, and that has actually become one of my low-key favorites of his. And then this, Lady Eve, is, I believe, his third film, and it's dynamite. Story of the son of an ale baron, if you will, a family that has made their wealth out of Pike's Pale Ale, the ale that won for Yale. And we find Henry Fonda's character. He's the son. He's into snakes. He's been up the Amazon for a year studying snakes, and he is able to hitch a ride on this riverboat, and he immediately is targeted because he's so high profile and seen as a rich guy. He's targeted by a small group of card sharps, played by Charles Coburn, who plays father to Eve, or Eugenia, played by I'm confusing two different things she does in the movie, but she is the daughter, and they have a third guy with them, and they basically go from riverboat to riverboat, fleecing people in card games. And he immediately, there's a great way that they set up his character, the way that she meets his character and hooks him in. And I'm not going to spoil all of Lady Eve, because I really would recommend you guys check it out. If you have any inklings about classic comedy at all, and if you've only seen Barbara Stanwyck in dramatic roles, if you've only seen her in Double Indemnity, she is truly spectacular in this film, in both comedic sort of capabilities and dramatic, emotional moments. Because this film is able to be funny and have, a bunch of pratfalls, like 9, big pratfalls. I think Sturges will later say too many pratfalls. I disagree. I think it works. And Henry Fonda is very funny, and he didn't do a lot of comedies, but he's a total goof in this, and he really takes himself too seriously, and that's very funny too. But it's sort of a scenario where, she sees him as a mark, she starts to fall for him, and it doesn't go where you think it would go. A normal movie about this kind of scenario would end at the halfway point that this movie ends. And then this movie has this whole other section that is great, and I'm not going to talk about it, but uses a lot of the great character actors that Sturges had in his quiver, if you will, including Bill Demarest, who is Muggsy. He plays the sort of guy who's watching out for the Henry Fonda character, and he's very suspicious of everybody, incredibly funny. Eugene Pallette, heavyset actor with like a bullfrog voice, really great character actor, plays the patriarch of the Pike family, and so he's Henry Fonda's dad, and he's really great, not only as comedic stuff, but he also has some good dramatic moments in the film. And then you have folks like Eric Blore, who is just, he wore a monocle, I think for real, like his characters always had monocles, but I think it was actually a real thing for him. And he's really good. There's no Franklin Pangborn in this. That's another one of Sturges' regulars, but there's a few other familiar Sturges faces, some actors that are in Sullivan's Travels, which is often, Sullivan's Travels and Lady Eve and Palm Beach Story are often said to be the three great Sturges films, but they're part of a run of films of about 7 or 8. Maybe one skips over, and Unfaithfully Yours is a little later, but it's an incredible run of films. And Sturges, he, like I said, he directed from 42. I think he died when he was 60. Yeah. And I think he only directed until he was 55. So about 13 years of directing, and he put out, 7 or so, maybe 8 incredibly great comedies. Just incredible. Just an incredible guy, and I really love his stuff. Anyway, this Criterion Blu-ray looks great and has an audio commentary from the DVD. This is an upgrade, basically, from Marion Keene, which is good. Also from the DVD, filmmaker Peter Bogdanovich introduction, which is only about 8 minutes, but covers a lot of ground and makes a lot of great points. And there's a new conversation with Preston Sturges' biographer's son, Tom Sturges, Bogdanovich, James L. Brooks, Ron Shelton, Susan King, Leonard Maltin, and Kenneth Turan. It's a Zoom call. It starts out a little wonky, like people finding their way. These are older people, dealing with Zoom early on in the pandemic. And so, but once it gets going, it's a really fun conversation. New video essay by film critic David Cairns, which I like very much. Costume designs by Edith Head, featurette. There's some radio adaptations. And anyway, one of my favorite Criterion Blu-rays. If I ever sold off my Criterions or part of it, this one could not go because it's absolutely one of the best. So, and then I've got a couple I'm going to throw in here from Code Red. So I haven't had a chance to watch these, but I am curious about them. The first one is called Dirty ONeil, The Love of a Cop. And this is from 1974. And it stars Morgan Paul, an actor I'm not that familiar with, ultimately. But it says Morgan Paul from Blade Runner, apparently, is Dirty ONeil, a small-town policeman with a big-time libido. On the rare occasions when his pants are on, he patrols the neighborhood and coaches the girls' basketball team. But when 3 nasty hoodlums appear in his peaceful California town, Dirty wastes no time dispensing justice. This sizzling slice of 70s exploitation will quench your thirst for raunchy cop comedy. Co-directed by Leon Capitanos, Secret Life of Schoolgirl Wife, and Louis Teague. Oh, that's cool. All right, I'm in. I love Louis Teague. Alligator, Lady in Red, Cujo. And co-starring Art Metrano, the Police Academy movies, and Breathless, Pat Anderson, Gene Mason, and Katie Saylor. And this is a brand new 2K master. This is from Code Red, Region A. So that's cool. 70s exploitation film I was not familiar with, but definitely want to check out. And I do love the Kino Code Red partnership. I've mentioned that before. I love that they're putting out old movies that Code Red had released, and in some cases, I don't know if they ever did this one. So it's a new one for me. That is Dirty ONeil, The Love of a Cop. And then last, Dagmars Hot Pants Inc. This is one I'd heard of, but I don't really know too much about. You can see some quotes on the front here from these lovely ladies. I don't care what your wife calls me as long as you do. Some girls are clerks or stenographers. I'm just lucky, I guess. Someday I'll have my own business, and I'm putting my boyfriend through college. So this one, it says Scandinavian bombshell Deanna Kajer from Fanny Hill is Dagmar, a classy call girl in Copenhagen. To Dagmar, a pleasure is a business and business is a pleasure. But after 2 years in the trade, she's ready to quit. Join Dagmar on the final day of her career. She visits various clients and female friends for one last hurrah. Also known as Dagmar & Co. and co-starring Robert Strauss from Stalag 17 and Grete Inger Sud, and Tommy Blom. Dagmar's Hot Pants Inc. is a charming 70s sex comedy that's sure to satisfy. I can't remember if this one had come out before either, but this is also a brand new 2K master from Code Red. Looks pretty goofy, but it's from 1971. Could be fun. I definitely like that title, and sometimes the title is enough to get me to check out a movie. So that is Dagmar's Hot Pants Inc., a.k.a. Dagmar & Co. along with Dirty ONeil, The Love of a Cop from Code Red to close out this episode. So thank you so much for taking the time to watch the video, especially if you watched all the way to the end. Thank you for listening, if that's how you approach this. And I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.